I broke up with my fiancé after I caught him having an affair with his secretary at home on his birthday. Today is my birthday, and I pretended to tell my boyfriend that I was going on a business trip and might not be able to attend the birthday party he arranged for me. However, this was just an excuse, and I actually wanted to give him a surprise. We have been together for 5 years, and I have a vague feeling that Gui-chan will propose to me today. After all, we have been together for 5 years. Through his friend's circle of friends, I found out that he would hold a banquet in our luxury villa area, and my heart was full of anticipation. Gui-chan was finally going to propose to me. Thinking about the upcoming happiness, I felt an irrepressible joy in my heart. On my birthday, I dressed up very exquisitely, full of expectations, but strangely, he didn't call me from morning to night. Maybe he wanted to keep it mysterious. I found the villa based on my friend's circle of friends. When I opened the door, I saw that the party had already started. The scene was decorated lively and filled with the laughter of friends. The air was filled with a relaxed and happy atmosphere. But all the people attending the party were his friends, but none of my friends. I looked around for Gui-chan, expecting to see his surprised expression. However, when I looked for him in the crowd, my heart sank. In the corner, a scene hurt my eyes. Gui-chan was kissing his secretary Linda intimately. They were talking in low voices, behaving in an ambiguous way, and the woman was actually his secretary. What was even more unbearable for me was that they couldn't help but want to continue doing something pleasant on the sofa. I stood far away, feeling heartbroken and unable to breathe. Since my parents passed away, Gui-chan has been my only family, but now this family is also collapsing before my eyes. He actually cheated on me. The birthday party that was supposed to be his proposal suddenly turned into a ridiculous farce, and I was the only fool who was kept in the dark. I stood there stiffly, unable to move, staring at them. At this moment, Gui-chan noticed my presence, but his reaction made me completely desperate. Not only did he not show the slightest surprise, he even sneered, took Linda's hand, and walked towards me. "Yuri back. Weren't you on a business trip?" There was contempt and sarcasm in his tone, as if everything was taken for granted. Linda had a disdainful smile on her face, and her tone was provocative. "It seems that you have discovered our secret in advance." She patted Gui-chan's shoulder gently, her eyes full of teasing and victory, as if I was just a supporting role in their game. I stood there, torn between anger and sadness, unable to believe what I was seeing. Their indifference and calmness made me feel like a complete joke. All the efforts and love of the past 5 years were so casually wiped out at this moment. I realized that in their eyes, I was just an insignificant outsider, a fool who was mercilessly teased. Just as I was trying to calm my inner turmoil, Gui-chan began his proposal speech. He stood in front of everyone, as if he was the protagonist of the show, and I was just a bystander. Jingjing, he suddenly turned to me. A hint of false apology flashed in his eyes. He nodded slightly, his voice cold and cruel. "Thank you for your companionship for so many years, but I'm sorry, I want to marry someone else." The whole place was silent, and everyone's eyes were on me. Several of his friends stood beside me, as if they were preparing to prevent me from suddenly rushing over to stop it. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, and my hands and feet were cold, as if time had stopped. Then, Linda walked forward and took over the conversation with a smile. "Sister Jing, I'm sorry to meet you in this way. Ichan has always treated you as his sister, and he doesn't want to hurt you." She kept thanking me for everything I had done for Gui-chan, but every word she said was like a sharp sword, piercing my heart and making blood flow. "Sister, it turns out that I'm just a sister, but if he really treats me as a sister, will he have sex with me? This is just an excuse for not loving me." At this moment, I finally understood that everyone knew this cruel truth except me. The sympathetic looks from the guests around me made me feel uneasy. I stood there, my ears buzzing, my cheeks flushed with anger and humiliation. I took a deep breath and finally regained some clarity. Without saying a word, I turned and walked towards the door. Every step seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, dragging my dignity with me as I left this place full of hypocrisy and betrayal. Just as I was about to reach the door, someone shouted from behind, "Your bag fell." I stopped and sneered. That was the birthday gift Gui-chan gave me. Now, I would feel sick if I touched it again. I didn't look back, but just quickened my pace and walked out of the luxurious villa that I once thought would be my future. The light outside the door was very dazzling, and my stiff smile finally collapsed at this moment. Suddenly, someone leaned against the car and said to me with a smile, "You look so bad." If you don't know, You would think you just attended a funeral. I turned around and saw that it was Meng Kai. He leaned against the car and smoked, with a hint of teasing on his face. Want to go? I'll give you a ride, he said, opening the passenger door. I hesitated for a moment, then got in the car. Meng Kai didn't ask me where I was going. He just stepped on the accelerator and the car sped away. My anger and grievance were gradually replaced by fear under his fast driving, and I had to hold on to the door tightly, as if I would be thrown out of the car in the next second. When the car finally stopped, I almost collapsed and fell off the car. My legs went weak, and I knelt on the ground. Seeing this, Meng Kai came over and squatted in front of me, frowning and looking at me. You are really in a mess. If you don't know, you would think you just crawled out of hell. I glared at him fiercely, raised my hand to wipe my eyes, and then I realized that I was actually crying out of fear. The tears of adults are so precious, but at this moment, they flowed out involuntarily. Perhaps because he noticed the hatred in my eyes, Meng Kai's expression became complicated. Are you short of someone around you? I suddenly asked out of the blue. The words came to my lips, but I didn't dare to say them directly, so I was deliberately vague. Meng Kai looked at me deeply and said nothing, but just helped me up and brushed the dust off me. Then he picked me up and I subconsciously hugged his neck, a move that was so natural that even I was surprised. We walked towards a private plane parked not far away. Meng Kai did not explain, and I did not ask any more questions. Perhaps this was the escape I wanted. From the time I got on the plane to the time it took off, I felt like I was wrapped in a dream and didn't want to wake up. When the plane was flying steadily in the air, Meng Kai handed me a bag of clothes, and I noticed how thoughtful he was. He knew I would be in a mess, so he had already prepared new clothes, and there was even a flight attendant to guide me to change clothes. When I came back after changing my clothes, Meng Kai was already sitting in his seat, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, looking at me with a slight smile. What are your plans for the future? I pursed my lips in silence, the image of that wedding coming to my mind, a place I never wanted to go back to. The pain in my heart was still there, but I knew that at least I hadn't lost myself. Looking at Meng Kai's deep eyes, I suddenly felt that I needed a new adventure, perhaps to forget the past, or perhaps to start over. Anywhere is fine, as long as it's not standing still, I replied, my voice more firm than I thought it would be. He smiled and raised his glass to me. I also picked up a glass, gently touched the rim, and drank it all in one gulp. The environment outside the window was pitch black. The magical thing was that after getting in Meng Kai's car, I never thought about Gui Chen again. I even had the mind to look at this legendary billion-dollar car. Before the misfortune, my family was on equal footing with Gui Chen's family. As a child, I was considered a rich man. I was used to seeing a lot of things. But compared to the Meng family, we are just frogs in a well. If it weren't for Meng Kai's grandfather, who was a mentor to our parents, I'm afraid Gui Chen and I would never have had the opportunity to meet Meng Kai. After taking a shower, I felt much more clear-headed. However, when I thought about how I had just offered myself to Meng Kai, I couldn't help but blush with shame, and I almost forgot to breathe. Just when I was about to hide my head and escape, there was a knock on the door. Are you planning to camp inside? Meng Kai's deep voice came through the crack in the door. I paused, then slowly opened the door but didn't dare look him in the face. His expression gradually changed from concern to displeasure, and his frown seemed to be probing something. Are you so sad about Gui Chen's marriage? His words startled me, and I shook my head subconsciously, denying it almost reflexively. Who would miss him? I'm thinking about you. After I finished speaking, the air fell into silence, and I realized belatedly what I had said. Damn it. I closed my eyes tightly, wishing I could find a hole to crawl into. However, I suddenly felt a warm touch on my lips. I opened my eyes suddenly and met Meng Kai's burning gaze. He said softly, I've been waiting for you to say this for many years. I felt my mind go blank, and I responded to his kiss unconsciously. Meng Kai's movement suddenly paused. He straightened up slightly and looked at me. Is it okay? His voice was so low that I could hardly hear it, but the sound of his accelerated heartbeat seemed to explode in my ears. I mustered up the courage to stand on tiptoe and kiss him. The long-accumulated emotions in my heart seemed to be released. Until the end, he held me in his arms with a long breath and declared gently and domineeringly, don't ever think of leaving my side in this life. The takeoff and landing of the plane made me feel as if a century had passed. I was so drowsy that I didn't know how I got off the plane. When I woke up and opened my eyes, I saw a green landscape outside the window and a few leisurely giraffes in the distance. I felt an arm gently around my waist, and then I realized that last night was not a dream. I got up carefully and walked to the bathroom. I washed up, and just halfway through, the door was suddenly pushed open. I looked up and saw Meng Kai standing at the door. He was obviously a little nervous because he noticed my absence, and he was relieved when he saw me. His naked upper body was covered with red marks, and it was obvious that the marks from last night had not yet disappeared. I looked away involuntarily, a little shyly, trying to hide my embarrassment. Meng Kai approached and said with a hint of sarcasm, "Shy? It seems that you have done too little." His words made my cheeks hot. It was not until we sat at the dining table that I calmed down a little and didn't want to talk to him anymore. Meng Kai was watching from the side and suddenly said, "I'll take you to meet a few people later." His calm tone puzzled me, and I couldn't help asking, "Who?" The corners of his mouth slightly raised. He looked at me with a half smile, but he didn't say anything. I couldn't help but think of the faces of his friends, wondering who I would meet next. However, when I stood in the spacious reception room and saw the two elders and Meng Kai's grandfather standing opposite me, I suddenly froze and felt a strong sense of embarrassment in my heart. At the dining table, I pinched Meng Kai's leg hard, suggesting that he explain the situation. But he smiled and hugged me tightly and formally introduced me to the three elders. "Dad, Mom, Grandpa, this is the person I want to marry." My eyes widened. I couldn't believe my ears. We were just nodding acquaintances last night. How come he suddenly became the one I want to marry? Even if we had some intimate contact, this was not a reason to rush into a lifelong decision. He didn't seem to notice my shock and continued talking to his family naturally, so I had to deal with it. With the support of my upbringing, I managed to remain elegant and calm and tried my best to fit in with their conversation. Meng Kai's parents are both influential figures who often appear in financial magazines, and Meng Kai's grandfather is an elder whom my family has always respected. I originally thought that this kind of family atmosphere would suffocate me, but unexpectedly, after Meng Kai formally introduced me, they were very kind to me, especially his grandfather, who had a smiling face. His grandfather turned around and glared at Meng Kai, jokingly scolding him. "You little brat, you took so long to chase a girl. My teachings are totally wasted." I blushed with embarrassment and was about to speak to ease the situation, but Meng Kai smiled and replied, "It's because you forced me to concentrate on my studies that I was robbed by someone else." I suddenly felt a warm current wrapping me up and even a little moved. His family's attitude towards me made me feel unprecedented warmth. It turned out that Meng Kai had already mentioned me to them, but because of my relationship with Gui Chen, he never confessed his feelings to me. If it weren't for the sudden change in my family, perhaps we wouldn't have met again today. At the end of the meal, Meng Kai's mother asked me for her contact information, which made me realize that my phone had been turned off due to lack of battery. Back at the manor, I charged my phone and watched the screen light up, thinking only of talking to him about our future. Meng Kai came over, hugged me, and whispered, "What are you thinking about?" I took a deep breath and finally mustered up the courage to say, "Should we have a clear explanation of our relationship?" When I sat in the living room of Meng Kai Manor, holding the phone that had just been charged, I felt unusually calm. After the phone was turned on, missed calls and messages kept pouring out, almost flooding the screen. I didn't rush to check, and my eyes fell on Meng Kai across from me. He leaned back in his chair, looking at the phone in my hand leisurely, as if waiting for something. "Meng Kai, why did you take me to meet your parents?" I finally mustered up the courage to break the silence. Although he had already told me the answer with his actions, I still wanted to hear him tell me the reason in person. "Why?" Just when I was at a loss, he took me away and arranged for me to meet his family. All this was too unreal. Meng Kai raised his chin slightly and asked, "What do you think?" He was still half leaning on the chair, and his expression was not clear in the backlight. This vague answer made me feel a little uneasy, and the doubts in my heart became stronger. Seeing that I was silent, Meng Kai frowned slightly and said helplessly, "It seems that I am not obvious enough. Sorry, this is my first time to fall in love. If there is anything wrong, please feel free to point it out." He suddenly stood up and slowly approached me. I felt a sense of oppression and almost forgot to breathe. Just as he reached out to grab my phone, I came back to my senses. Meng Kai in front of me pressed the answer button with extraordinary concentration and then turned on the speakerphone mode. I was a little surprised, but strangely, I didn't feel any disgust, but instead felt unexpectedly relieved. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment, and then a familiar voice came. "Jing Jing, is that you?" You finally answered the phone. It was Gu Yichen's mother, whom I affectionately called Godmother. But at the wedding yesterday, she was also one of the people watching coldly from the audience. Now when I hear her voice, the intimacy of the past has long been diluted, replaced by indifference. Annie, is there something wrong? I asked lightly, deliberately not calling her godmother. The other party was silent for a few seconds, as if shocked by my distant tone. After a moment, she actually sobbed. Jingjing, godmother is sorry for you and for letting you suffer so much grievance. Her tone was full of self-blame, as if she was the one who suffered, not me. She explained that the Gu family's business had problems, and for the benefit of the family, they had to choose to marry into the Zhao family. She tried to make me understand their difficulties, as if this could erase Gu Yichen's ruthlessness at the wedding. But every word she said made me feel more and more unfamiliar, as if I had never really known this godmother. At this time, Meng Kai spoke slowly, his voice as cold as ice. Do you really think she is an orphan without parents who is easy to bully? You know what you have done. His tone was steady, but full of deterrence. The other party fell silent immediately after hearing it, and then hung up the phone in a hurry. I looked up at Meng Kai, trying to read something from his face, but he seemed to have known it all beforehand and explained lightly. While you were sleeping, I checked the situation of the Gu family. As for those rumors, I spread them on purpose. His words were plain, but a little cold. I took my phone back and opened my moments, and immediately found that the news about yesterday's wedding had been all over the internet. I don't know who took the embarrassing photo of the wedding scene and wrote in the caption, "Best man becomes groom. Scumbag cheated and brought his fiancée to his wedding." The comment section was almost boiling with people speaking up for my situation, while others were disgusted with Gui Chen. Looking at those comments, I actually felt an inexplicable sense of relief, as if those long-suppressed emotions had finally been vented. Thinking of Gui Chen, we had spent 5 years together. From childhood sweethearts to lovers, Gui Chen and I have known each other for more than 20 years and have been together for 5 years. People who know us say that we are a match made in heaven. My parents had an accident and my company changed hands. Gui Chen and his family took great care of me. And this person who said he would love me forever had a new girlfriend without my knowledge and even let me witness his wedding with my own eyes. This is the worst way to kill someone. Meng Kai pulled his chair closer and gently held my hand. Jingjing, Gui Chen is not worth you wasting any more emotions on him. His eyes were firm, and that determination made me feel unprecedented security. I just feel a little unwilling. I whispered what was in my heart. For so many years, I thought we knew each other and were together, but I didn't expect that he would scheme against me so thoroughly. He patted the back of my hand comfortingly and said with a hint of teasing, "If you want, I can accompany you to slowly digest these pains until you figure it out." I couldn't help but smile. I really have to thank you for your timely action this time. I paused and decided not to dwell on the past. Should we have a clear answer now? Meng Kai was silent for a moment, as if he was organizing his thoughts. Then he slowly spoke. I know your past and your disappointment. Jingjing, I can wait for you, but please don't avoid me anymore. His eyes were affectionate, and with a gentle power, I let down my guard. Meng Kai's sudden confession was like dropping a huge rock into a calm lake, stirring up the ripples in my heart. His words were like a sharp knife, cutting through my understanding of the past and revealing the doubts that had been hidden for a long time. He said calmly, I was just cheating her. What happened to your family that year might not have been an accident. Although his tone was calm, there was a hint of coldness in it. What? I suddenly widened my eyes, unable to believe my ears. Meng Kai continued to explain, looking at me with a hint of apology, but his eyes were extremely firm. I want to know clearly whether the Gu family has any hidden secrets behind it. You also saw Gui Chen's mother's reaction just now. This is definitely not normal. He said it so calmly, as if things were supposed to be this way. The scene when my parents passed away emerged in my mind. Those days were extremely dark. Just after our family had just experienced this tragic change, the company was in turmoil and problems continued to arise. If Gui Chen had not been with me at the time, I almost dared not imagine whether I could have survived. But now think about it, all this could be manipulated by humans? Gui Chen's care was actually for another purpose? When I thought of this, my heart seemed to be torn apart, and my eyes could not help but turn red. Meng Kai pulled me into his arms and pulled me onto his lap. His movements were gentle, but full of irresistible strength. I felt his arms tightly around me, with an irresistible warmth. He spoke slowly, with a bit of sadness in his tone. I'm sorry. I wasn't with you at that time and couldn't help you. I will find out everything hidden behind the Goof family. The determination in his words rushed into my heart like a warm current. Menkai has always been the kind of person who keeps silent even in the face of difficulties, but at this moment, he showed such determination and anger for me. He lowered his head slightly and whispered in my ear, I promise you, no matter how deep the Gu family hides it, I will definitely find out the truth. Thinking back to when Menkai suddenly went abroad, everything seemed to have an explanation. Perhaps he left to find the truth that I had never known, and now he is no longer the little man who was manipulated by others. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but tremble slightly. After all, Guichin's kindness to me was my only support, and now this support is slowly collapsing. Sensing my restless struggle, Menkai suddenly put his face close to my ear and said in a low and hoarse voice, Don't move. His arms tightened slightly, and his warm breath swept over my ears, and I couldn't help but stiffen all over. It turned out that even after the intimacy with Menkai last night, I still felt unfamiliar and flustered about this emotion. He noticed my nervousness and suddenly gave me a gentle kiss behind my ear and said softly, Don't be afraid, I won't touch you, at least not for a few days. His words carried a firm promise, and I actually felt an unprecedented comfort. It was as if in his arms, I could finally stop pretending and stop thinking about how to deal with the past hurts. Menkai was like a barrier, separating me from the pain of the past. This inexplicable sense of security made me relax and quietly snuggle in his arms. His hands gently soothed my back, as if he was conveying a silent strength to me. At this moment, I finally felt a long-lost sense of steadiness, as if after going through so many storms, I finally found a safe harbor. Menkai, will you really find out everything for me? I looked up and into his eyes, searching for an answer. Menkai nodded without hesitation, his deep eyes revealing an incomparable determination. This is not only for you, but also for myself. I want to know what happened back then. I felt a surge of warmth in my heart. An unprecedented warmth and sense of dependence filled my heart, and the wounds of the past seemed to be gradually healed. No matter what the future holds, I know that at least with Menkai by my side, I am no longer alone and helpless. At the moment when we were looking at each other affectionately, the phone screen lit up again, interrupting our tranquility. I looked down and saw that it was a message from Guichin. Every word he said was full of apology, as if he wanted to redeem something. However, I knew that I would never look back. Menkai's embrace made me realize that those false promises in the past were no longer the future I longed for. I took a deep breath, put my phone aside, and hugged Menkai tightly. No matter what the truth is, I will face it with you. He gently rubbed my hair and said with a smile, This time, I will not let go of your hand again. I found that Menkai was so straightforward and even a little childish when expressing his feelings. At first, his simple sentence, I can't sleep at night without you, made me blush and my heart beat fast. I was completely caught off guard by his frankness and even forgot to think about Gu's family problems. After returning to the manor, Menkai took me around and introduced the exotic animals he raised. The manor was like a small zoo, and even a majestic lion made its home there. Since I was a child, I've noticed that animals seem to like to be close to me. Cats and dogs are fine, but I didn't expect that the lions and tigers here are also curious about me. That day, I was stroking the belly of a lion lying lazily on the ground. It actually obediently exposed its belly to let me stroke it. Menkai, who was squatting with me, suddenly picked me up and whispered, This is a male. Pay attention to the gender. I was stunned for a few seconds before I realized. Menkai would actually be jealous of a male lion. Looking at his somewhat disgusted and dissatisfied expression, I couldn't help laughing out loud, and the sadness in my heart seemed to be washed away by his action. The days in the manor were peaceful and interesting, just like a fairy-like life. Menkai seemed to sense that I was getting bored after staying in the manor for so long, so he took me on his private plane, saying every time that he was going to inspect the property. But it turned out that he was just taking me around in this name. He owns a variety of luxurious manors and resorts, and every time I went to a place, I sighed that this man's life was like heaven. But Menkai's inspection was never a normal schedule. On the fifth flight, I finally realized that after every takeoff, he would not let me sit quietly until the end of the flight. He would always find various opportunities during the flight for me to chat with him or look at the scenery outside the window. One time, he even asked me to learn how to fly a helicopter. At first, I was so nervous that my palms were sweating. Later, whenever I saw a plane, my legs would go weak as a reflex, wondering where he would take me next. During this time, Guichin's phone calls never stopped, and occasionally from unfamiliar numbers. The first time I received his call, Meng Kai was beside me. When he saw me answer the phone, his face suddenly darkened. Without waiting for me to explain, Meng Kai took my phone and quickly blacklisted Guichin's number. He looked at me without any guilt, but smiled quite proudly, as if he had completed an important task. In the next few days, every time Guichin called from a new number, Meng Kai used the same method to block them one by one, as if he enjoyed clearing out those numbers that he thought should not exist. On the day I returned home, he sent me to the door of my house and said to me with a serious expression, "I have an urgent matter to deal with. Pack your things, and I will come back to pick you up later." On the way back home, he kept persuading me to move in with him. As for other things, he always let me do what I want, but on this matter, he was particularly persistent. "I can't sleep at night without you." He said it bluntly, but I blushed and my heart beat fast because of his seriousness. After returning home, I began to seriously consider Meng Kai proposal. In the past month, he has proved his sincerity with his actions. Even though I felt a little shy and uncomfortable with his straightforwardness, I was still looking forward to it. However, when I walked to the door and prepared to open it with my fingerprint, I suddenly realized a problem. Guichin's fingerprint information was still stored on the door lock. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but become alert. Maybe it was Meng Kai who made me start to pay more attention to these details, or maybe what happened during this period made me cautious. I took a deep breath, quickly checked the fingerprint system, and deleted Guichin's fingerprint information. Those days in the past seemed to be drifting away from me. Now, I am no longer the Jingjing who simply relied on others. I feel a self-protection force growing in my heart, and this force has become stronger with Meng Kai's company. While I was packing, Meng Kai suddenly called me. "Are you done packing? I'll wait for you downstairs." My heart warmed, and I quickly packed my luggage. I have deleted Guichin's fingerprints and changed the password. This house that once belonged to me should now be returned to its original owner. Everything here, whether it is the old pillows on the sofa or the porcelain bowls in the corner of the kitchen, was bought by Guichin and I. But now, these beautiful memories only make me feel sick. Meng Kai recently told me that his investigation into the Gu family has made some progress. The death of my parents is closely related to the Gu family. Thinking of this, the anger that I had suppressed for many years rose again. I am no longer the Jingjing who compromised for love. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. Today, I not only have to say goodbye to this house, but also to my former self. Apart from my parents' belongings, I only took a few pieces of clothing. After packing, I closed my suitcase and prepared to call Meng Kai to tell him that I would go there myself. But at this moment, there was a warning tone at the door indicating that the password was entered incorrectly. I was startled. My heartbeat quickened and cold sweat poured onto my forehead. "Knock, knock, knock." There was a rapid knock on the door. "Jingjing, I know you're in there. Open the door. Let's talk." It was Guichin's voice, low and full of suppressed anger. Even though he tried his best to suppress his emotions, I could still hear his dissatisfaction. At this moment, I was extremely glad that I had changed my password, but what surprised me even more was that he was not alone. I looked through the peephole and saw a strange man standing next to him, and the two of them were talking in a low voice. My heart instantly tightened, and I held the phone tightly. Seeing that I didn't respond, Guichin began to bang on the door angrily, and a loud noise echoed in the silent room. I quickly clicked on Meng Kai's message and quickly called him. On the other side of the door, Guichin and the man had already started to bang hard, and the door frame gradually deformed with the loud noise. At the moment the door was smashed open, Meng Kai's phone finally got through. "Meng Kai, come and save me," I shouted anxiously, my voice trembling with fear. "Jingjing, what happened? Don't be afraid. I'll be there right away," Meng Kai roared on the other end of the phone. I held the phone tightly and felt as if all the strength in my body had been drained. Guichin stood in front of me, his tone surprisingly calm. "Jingjing, come here, let's talk." His voice was low and cold, but the calm tone formed a strong contrast with his expression at the moment. I have never seen Guichin like this. "What?" I tried to keep my voice calm and avoid angering him. He did not answer, but threw the stick in his hand to the ground and asked softly, "Why are you with Meng Kai? What is your relationship?" When I heard this question, I was shocked. It turned out that he cared about Meng Kai. "Me and him? It's what you think it is," I replied disdainfully. Guichin's tone of voice, as if catching an adulterer, made me feel baffled, and my tone became sharp. Gui Chin's eyes turned cold instantly, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. Break up with him, and I'll pretend nothing happened. I've transferred the house to your name, and you can continue to live here. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard his words. What do you mean? Let me be your mistress. Jingjing, don't say such harsh words. He smiled coldly. Marriage is not my wish. Bringing you to meet my family, and saying those things were all Linda's request. You know, the person I really love is you. His words were like a sharp knife stabbing into my heart, but the pain was immediately covered by anger. I stared at his ridiculous face and said in a cold voice, Shut up, Gui Chin. Why do you think that after being humiliated in public and dumped by you, I will still wait for you to come back like a fool? When Gui Chin heard what I said, his face darkened instantly. He approached me step by step and said in a cold voice, I don't care what happened between you and Meng Kai. Cut off your relationship with him and come back to me. I will forgive you. My heart tightened. Gui Chin in front of me had completely changed. He was no longer the person I once loved. I suppressed my fear and remained calm. Who gave you such confidence, Gui Chin? Who made you think you still had the power to control me? Jingjing, don't push me. He stared at me fiercely, with undisguised anger flashing in his eyes. I swung my hand and slapped Gui Chin hard. The crisp sound echoed in the empty room. A moment of surprise flashed across his face, but then the familiar sneer returned to the corner of his mouth. The strange man who came with him raised his mobile phone and pointed the camera at me and Gui Chin, as if recording something. Alarm bells rang in my heart. They definitely had bad intentions. Jingjing, I have been reluctant to touch you for so many years, but Meng Kai got there first. Gui Chin sneered, his eyes full of sarcasm and twisted possessiveness. He suddenly raised his hand and tore off his shirt, revealing his sturdy upper body, seemingly ignoring my angry gaze. Don't be afraid. I'll be gentler, he said, walking towards me. My heartbeat accelerated instantly. I knew I couldn't panic, but my mind told me that the situation was extremely dangerous. I took a step back while he wasn't paying attention, trying to escape. However, the man holding the phone was faster, grabbed my arm, and pushed me towards Gui Chin. Gui Chin took advantage of the situation and hugged me into his arms, buried his head in my neck, breathing heavily and quickly, like a wild animal. Let me go. Gui Chin. I struggled desperately, my heart filled with fear and anger. If you dare to touch me, I will kill you. Just when I was in despair, I suddenly heard a shrill scream, breaking the tense atmosphere in the room. Gui Chin paused and wanted to look back to see what happened, but before he could move, he was grabbed from behind and fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Several black shadows flashed into the room, and several men in black quickly surrounded Gui Chin and the strange man, punching and kicking them, and the two fell to the ground one after another without any ability to fight back. I fell to the ground, still in shock, and my eyesight was blurred by tears. Just then, one of the men in black approached me. I subconsciously stepped back, feeling nervous again, but he did not take any further action. Instead, he said respectfully, Miss Liu, I'm sorry we are late. Mr. Meng will be here soon. Don't be afraid. His voice was low and calm, and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I realized that Meng Kai had anticipated the danger and had specially asked the bodyguards to come and protect me in advance, but was delayed for some reason, which gave Gui Chin the opportunity to take advantage of it. Thinking of this, the fear in my heart gradually dissipated, leaving only gratitude and relief. I wiped my tears and thanked the bodyguards. When Meng Kai arrived, I had already sat down on the sofa, trying to look calm and okay. However, when he rushed into the room and saw me, he ignored everything and hugged me tightly in his arms, so hard that I almost couldn't breathe. Fortunately, you're okay, he said in a low voice with suppressed anger. If Gui Chin dares to touch you, I will chop him up to vent your anger. His words instantly dispelled any remaining fear I had. I raised my head, looked up at him, tears glistening in my eyes, and gently kissed the skin above his Adam's apple. Your people arrived just in time, I'm fine, I said softly, feeling touched and dependent in my heart. Meng Kai loosened his embrace, held my face with both hands, and without warning, he lowered his head and kissed me fiercely on the lips. This kiss was full of power and possessiveness, but also carried his deep worries and uneasiness. I responded to his kiss and gradually forgot all the fears I had before. Do you think Meng Kai can save you? He's just an outsider and can't do anything. Gu Chen said, gritting his teeth, his voice full of despair and madness. Seeing this, Gu Chen smiled coldly, his eyes full of disdain. Meng Kai, do you think you can protect her? She can only be mine. Meng Kai did not respond to him. Instead, he held my hand and whispered, let's go, let's get out of here. However, Gu Chen obviously would not let us go so easily. He waved his hand to the strange man beside him and said, stop them. The strange man raised his stick and approached us. My heart tightened, and I subconsciously took a step back. But Meng Kai stood firmly in front of me without any fear. He had never been so determined and fearless as he was at this moment, which made me feel safer than ever before. If before, Gu Chen made me feel that I had trusted the wrong person in the past years, then now, he only makes me feel disgusted. Why does he think that after dumping me in public, I should stay where I am? Who gave you the courage? Who gave him the confidence? Jingjing, you and Meng Kai are broken up. I don't care what happened between you and him. Just be obedient and stay by my side. Gu Chen wanted to come over and hug me. Meng Kai took the opportunity to grab my hand and avoid him. At the moment when the situation was tense, a police siren suddenly sounded outside the door. Gu Chen's face changed instantly, and the strange man stopped and looked at Gu Chen hesitantly. Meng Kai took the opportunity to hold my hand and quickly led me out of the dark house. When I reached the door, I looked back at the place that once immersed me in countless memories. Now it has become the nightmare that I don't want to return to. Gu Chen was eventually abandoned at his doorstep. Later, the bodyguard reported that Gu Chen's mother Linda fainted from fear and almost had a miscarriage. When I heard the news, I didn't feel anything special. The resentment and anger in the past seemed to be dissipated at that moment. I just felt that it was time for all this to end. What happened back then has been basically investigated. Meng Kai leaned against me, still a little nervous, and said, I just wanted to meet someone who knew the inside story today, but I almost got you into trouble. He frowned, with fear still in his eyes. Seeing his panicked expression, I couldn't help but soften my heart and laugh softly. Why are you acting like a child now? You still need me to comfort you. He was stunned for a moment. Then he showed a helpless smile and whispered, except for you, no one dares to say this to me. His eyes were gentle and a little doting, which made me feel warm in my heart. In the early morning of the next day, an article suddenly appeared on the hot search list and caused a huge sensation in just a few minutes. The title of the article was particularly eye-catching. Former fellow students killed their lives for money and seized their family property. When I saw this line of words, my heart trembled slightly, and I immediately clicked on the article. This article describes in detail the various suspicious points about my parents' accident and analyzes the Gu family's conspiracy step by step. After reading these words, I realized that there were so many unspeakable secrets behind my parents' death. Meng Kai's grandfather was a professor of medicinal chemistry, and my parents and Gu Chen's mother Linda were his grandfather's most proud students. Back then, my parents and the Gu family had a deep cooperative relationship. However, as the conflicts of interest gradually deepened, the Gu family began to covet my parents' research results. Especially after my father developed a drug, Gu Chen's father was ambitious and tried to obtain the formula from my father. However, my father insisted that the drug was high risk and was unwilling to put it on the market. Gu Chen's father therefore tried and threatened many times, and eventually created an accident that took the lives of my parents. I used to think that my life would be peaceful. After all, the art major I studied in college had nothing to do with my family business. But after my parents got into trouble, everything suddenly changed. The company suffered a series of setbacks, and the Gu family was the driving force behind most of the problems. I was not surprised by this. After all, it was all related to Gu Chen. Every time I think of the house I used to live in, I always feel a little bitter. Maybe it was because Gu Chen's mother felt guilty and wanted to compensate me. But these compensations could not cover up the facts. Someone told me that Gu Chen suddenly announced his marriage, and the wedding news spread with great fanfare. I smiled calmly, but I felt mixed emotions. The turning point happened at the Gu family. They used the prescription left by my father to produce medicine, which eventually caused a disaster. In the past few years, although there were patients who felt unwell after taking the medicine, the Gu family used money to settle most of the problems. However, this time, something went wrong and the accidents caused by the medicine increased exponentially. Since my company went bankrupt, I haven't paid attention to business affairs. But this time the incident was too big and even alarmed the entire business community. I know that Guichin's family must be very busy, and in order to calm down this storm, they must have done a lot of tricks. Linda's family threw some connections. Linda fell in love with Guichin at first sight. She knew that Guichin and I had been together for many years, and even had some bad taste in her heart. Not only did she not let him break up with me, but she forced him to abandon me in public on the wedding day. Guichin, for the benefit of the Gu family, gave in. That day, Guichin suddenly went crazy, hugging me nonstop and saying he loved me. His wedding was the next day, but he held me tightly and refused to let go. At that moment, I just felt extremely sick. The memories in front of me were interrupted by Meng Kai. He gently brushed my face with his hand and said in a gentle tone, "I'm glad you didn't cry." I looked at him and found myself surprisingly calm. It seemed that the anger and pain I had felt before had gradually dissipated as the truth was revealed. I only wanted to do one thing. I want to go see my parents. I said softly. The evil guy will eventually be exposed, and my parents' spirits in heaven should know everything. Meng Kai nodded and bought a lot of snacks without hesitation, and even brought 2 bottles of white wine. It's my first time meeting my parents. I don't know what to prepare, so I just want to have a good chat with them. When I arrived in front of my parents' tombstone, I thought I would burst into tears, but when I saw the full of refreshments, I froze and held back my tears. Meng Kai looked at me seriously and said, "It's windy on the mountain. Go wait in the car for a while. I'll talk to my parents alone." I knew he was serious, so I had to walk back to the car. Time passed slowly, and when he came back, he was holding a bunch of empty packaging bags. I looked at his flat stomach and asked in confusion, "What did you do with all the food?" "I've drunk quite a bit. You can drive when we get back." He opened the passenger seat lightly, and the strong smell of alcohol on him showed that he had drunk quite a bit. I changed the subject and asked him what he had talked about with my parents, but he looked mysterious and said, "This is a private conversation between my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Stop gossiping." I couldn't help but laugh. This man is always so creative. A few days later, the Gu family finally got their comeuppance. Guichin's parents were arrested for drug-related crimes. That night, I ate an extra bowl of rice and felt a small sense of accomplishment. Just when I was burping from eating too much, Meng Kai suddenly proposed to me. Why choose today? I was a little confused. After all, today is a special day for me. Because you are happy today, I want to make you happier. He said calmly, but I could feel his nervousness and anticipation. I smiled and stretched out my hand, motioning him to put the ring on me. After he put the ring on me, I kissed his cheek, which was still shiny. Meng Kai would not be disgusted because he knew me. Guichin was released after completing his statement because he was not directly involved in those illegal operations. He asked around about my residence, and it was even rumored that Linda slapped him in the face in public. The relationship between the two was so bad that they were almost getting divorced. But I have no time to care about these things because Meng Kai suddenly decided to set our wedding date at the end of the month, which is only half a month away. As a former second-generation rich man, this was the first time I really saw what money power meant. It has always been rumored that the Meng family is as rich as a country, and now I find that the rumors are true. Although the preparation time for the wedding was short, he did his best to do everything to the best of his ability. I thought I had lost the qualification to have you long ago. Meng Kai suddenly sighed when choosing a wedding dress. I chuckled and shook my head. Mom has already given us the most important ring. Wedding dresses and other things are just external things. As long as you think I'm beautiful, then it's the best. The Meng family has a set of heirloom jewelry inlaid with emeralds, which is priceless and symbolizes the family's recognition of their daughter-in-law. Meng Kai proposed to me. His mother sent someone to deliver the ring to me. It was an emerald ring passed down from my ancestors, shining with a cold but noble light. This is not an ordinary engagement ring, but a symbol of the Meng family's formal acceptance of me. The moment I received the ring, I felt an inexplicable power surge into my body. This is the confidence I have to face the ups and downs of life in the future, especially the uncertainties in marriage life. The Meng family gave you this, which shows that they value you very much. An old friend of mine once said, "If you don't care about these details, you will definitely be able to gain a firm foothold in the future." Actually, I didn't think that much. The trivialities of wedding preparations had exhausted me, and even choosing a wedding dress exhausted me. I tried on several custom-made couture wedding dresses, each of which was a work of art. But by the time I tried on the 4th one, I was exhausted and out of breath. Meng Kai has always been attentive. Seeing that I was not in good shape, he immediately gave up the idea of letting me continue trying and directly chose one that best suits my temperament from the several sets he had tried, a streamlined mermaid style that perfectly outlines my curves. This suit suits you best, he said firmly without any hesitation. I knew he meant it, and that's part of why I trusted him. Although he was very allergic, he actually planned to air freight fresh flowers from abroad to decorate the wedding in order to create a perfect wedding scene. When I heard this, I immediately stopped him. You are allergic to pollen, and you plan to go to the hospital on the wedding day? I don't want to be a widow right after getting married. He was stunned for a moment, then smiled and compromised. You are right. What about the everlasting flower? I heard that the everlasting flower is not bad. The meaning of everlasting flowers is never withering, which I think symbolizes a long-lasting marriage, which is exactly what I want. When Meng Kai heard this, he not only did not hesitate, but also asked the team to order the best everlasting flowers. A few days later, when I saw the design of the wedding venue, I was shocked. It was no longer just an ordinary wedding venue, but was built into a dreamy, eternal garden. The flowers on the ground sparkled in the sun, as if each flower carried our future. I have to admit that Meng Kai always does things to the extreme. The wedding must be held in the city where you were born and raised, he said casually while looking at the design. I'm afraid if the place is too far away, our parents won't be able to see it. This sentence instantly struck my heart. I had always been very calm, and even when I learned the truth, I didn't cry. When I took him to see my parents' graves, I held back my tears. When he proposed to me, I still kept smiling. However, it was this simple sentence that made my long-suppressed emotions burst out instantly, and tears flowed down involuntarily. Meng Kai didn't realize how touching his words were. He just looked at me calmly and said softly, "Don't worry, I'm serious." He was always straightforward, saying what he meant, and never letting people guess what he was thinking. This frankness made me feel at ease and made me more determined to spend the rest of my life with him. The wedding was a grand occasion. As the wedding of the only son of the Meng family, it naturally attracted the attention of countless media. Cameras, flashlights, and reporters filled the entire wedding scene, as if everyone wanted to get the first-hand report. Meng Kai's mother was also well prepared and gave big red envelopes to each media, telling them to record this important moment of a lifetime. I hope they can take the best pictures of us, my mother-in-law said to me with a smile. She took this wedding as seriously as I did. Standing in the center of the wedding scene, my thoughts drifted away for a while. After my parents passed away, my life was turned upside down. Not only did I lose my closest relatives, but I also lost contact with many friends. Those times when we laughed and cried together seemed to disappear in the past years. However, to my surprise, Meng Kai actually found my long-lost friends. Seeing them appear at my wedding one by one, I couldn't help but ask in shock, "How did you find them?" He smiled and pretended to be mysterious. "This is my secret." Meng Kai, you are really a capable person, I said half-jokingly, but my heart was filled with gratitude. This man always does things that touch me inadvertently. When I saw them, I felt a mixture of emotions, both surprised and happy. Just as my thoughts were drifting away, Meng Kai seemed to notice my emotional fluctuations and quietly leaned close to my ear and whispered, "I want to tell the whole world that you are marrying me." His voice was a little bit smiling, and the warm breath brushed against my ears, instantly calming me down. I couldn't help but turn my head to look at him, and suddenly I felt a little lucky in my heart, lucky that he was with me on this important day. When the MC smiled and said, "The groom can kiss the bride," I didn't know where the impulse came from. I suddenly lifted my veil, hugged Meng Kai's neck first, stood on tiptoes, and kissed him. There was a burst of laughter from the audience, and some people even whistled. I felt Meng Kai's body stiffen for a moment, but soon he reacted, raised his hands, and gently hugged my waist, responding to this unexpected kiss. At that moment, I seemed to hear the world go quiet, and only he and I were in this small world. At the moment we were kissing, I accidentally saw someone in the audience taking pictures with their mobile phones. Sure enough, within half an hour, the circle of friends was filled with photos of us kissing, and the comment section was full of blessings and jokes. Finally, after a round of toasts, Meng Kai and I finally had a chance to take a breath. I sat in the chair, just as I relaxed, when I suddenly heard a whisper. Although I didn't want to listen deliberately, their discussion became louder and louder, and it went straight into my ears. "Have you heard? The photo Xiaoqi took was forwarded like crazy. I don't know who sent it to Gui Chen, and he lost control after seeing it." I was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously pricked up my ears to listen. Another voice echoed, "Yes, I heard that his family's assets were recently liquidated, and he and Linda had just moved into a new house, but he smashed it to pieces in a rage. Linda even had a miscarriage because of this." It's not just that someone lowered his voice, his tone full of shock. Gui Chin was still in a daze in the ruins at the time and didn't even react when the ambulance arrived. Hearing this, I felt my chest sink slightly. Gui Chin's name is the last thing I want to hear again, but reality is always so cruel. It will tear open old wounds again without you noticing. I exhaled slowly, trying to put those unpleasant memories behind me. Honey, are you tired? Just then, Ming Kai's voice appeared in my ears again, with a hint of concern. He had just seen off a round of guests and hurried to my side, his eyes full of fatigue, but still with a smile. He wanted to hold me in his arms, regardless of the gazes from others. I quickly glared at him, signaling him to hold back. After all, there were still many people staring at us. He reluctantly let go of my hand, looking a little unhappy, like a child whose candy was taken away. Seeing him like this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud, and while no one was paying attention, I quickly kissed him on the cheek. As expected, Meng Kai's face instantly lit up, and a hint of unconcealed joy appeared in his eyes, as if the fatigue and depression just now were swept away. Are you satisfied? I asked in a low voice. He nodded with an unconcealable smug smile on his face, and his eyes were so gentle that it made me feel warm in my heart. At this moment, I suddenly realized that the people and things that had caused me so much pain in the past would no longer cause me any emotional fluctuations. Gui Chin, Linda, and even everything in the Gu family had already become passersby in my life. The man in front of me was the future I really wanted. For the rest of my life, I just want to make you happy. I whispered to myself. Although the words were soft, they sounded like a promise to my future. Meng Kai didn't hear clearly, but he tilted his head slightly, his eyes full of tenderness. He knew that I didn't need any extra explanations, and everything today was enough to express all the emotions in my heart. At the end of the wedding, the guests gradually dispersed. Meng Kai and I stood side by side in the sunset, watching the sunset gradually disappear into the horizon. I gently leaned on his shoulder, feeling the stability and strength conveyed by the man beside me. Have you ever regretted it? I asked suddenly, my voice so soft that it almost got blown away by the wind. Meng Kai was slightly stunned, then looked down at me with a puzzled look in his eyes. Why do you ask that? From the time we decided to get married to today, a lot of things have changed. I looked up at him with a sincere look. Have you never felt that choosing me was a risk? He looked at me quietly for a while, then held my hand and said firmly, No, I have never regretted it. At that moment, my heart was suddenly filled, as if all the troubles and anxieties of the past no longer existed. What about you? He asked me back, his eyes deep, as if he wanted to see through my heart. I smiled, leaned on his shoulder, and whispered, With you here, I'm not afraid of taking risks. After the wedding, life seemed to return to normal. Meng Kai and I moved into the apartment we bought after our wedding and started our life together. Days passed by, seemingly peaceful on the surface, but I often had a vague worry about the future in my heart. Life will not always be so peaceful, especially when the shadow of the past is still wandering in the dark. One weekend morning, the sun shone through the curtains into the house, making it so warm that one wanted to stay in bed. Meng Kai was busy preparing breakfast in the kitchen, occasionally singing a tuneless little song. Smelling the aroma coming from the kitchen, I yawned lazily, got out of bed, and walked into the living room. I smiled, and my heart was filled with warmth, and he was my unshakable mountain.